Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on at 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the apps of those two fine radio stations, which are free to download, free to use, and sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-24-7. 1313. You could call or text in. Producer Ray is standing by. Tonight, one note that I will continue to remind you of: Switchbacks and the Colorado Rapids in the round of 16 of the U.S. Open Cup. Roland Vargas and myself on the call coming up at 7 o'clock. But we begin with the Denver Nuggets, as we are on the eve of Game 6, another situation in which the Nuggets must win or they will be going home. But something has come out over the last couple of days, and there's so much like basketball stuff that I didn't get to this. But now I will. Thanks, NBA, for giving us an extra day between Game 5 and Game 6. You may have noticed that Jaden McDaniels was not the only person to be greeted by a chorus of boos at Ball Arena in Game 5. When David Adelman was announced with the starting lineup, he was met with a smattering of boos. 5 games into his first season, postseason, as the full-blown head coach of the Denver Nuggets, not just interim. It didn't take long, did it? The honeymoon period with David Adelman is long over. We're way past it. And what's going on with him reminds me of 2017. Not with the Denver Nuggets, but with the Denver Broncos. This is reminding me of Vance Joseph, what is going on with David Adelman. The similarities are there. Both of them replace head coaches that won titles, Michael Malone and Gary Kubiak. Both were questioned when they were hired on their experience. But you were told by the Broncos that Vance Joseph was a leader of men, quote unquote. And Josh Kroenke, when he gave Adelman the gig, said he, quote unquote, threaded the needle by challenging players with direct, candid communication while encouraging them, and added his quote-unquote fresh voice, established an atmosphere of accountability. Yet, Vance Joseph's teams looked woefully unprepared on Sundays, and David Adelman seems to want to try and hold reporters more accountable than his basketball team.
Coach, that's your best offensive showing of the series so far.
Offense doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Both have been questioned about the players they choose or do not choose to play. I remember there was a game where Vance Joseph took Jamal Charles out of a game because he fumbled, while everyone was looking at the way Trevor Siemian was playing quarterback and saying, why aren't you replacing that guy? I even found a quote, and I had forgotten about this. You remember when Vance Joseph said it's not a Trevor problem? He said that. I think he said it on more than one occasion. And that did not sit well with media and fans alike. And when he says it's not a Trevor problem, and he's taking something that many people believe is the issue and saying, no, it's this, doesn't it remind you of David Adelman continuing to say it's not an effort problem with the Denver Nuggets? Reminds me of that. And to the player thing, Adelman's rotations have been called into question. We didn't see much of Jonas Valanciunas until Game 5. Julian Strawther, Tyus Jones. Not saying that the fan base was clamoring for all of those guys, but Certainly David Adelman's usage or lack thereof of certain players has been called into question. But another similarity is what's behind all of this. Why did Broncos fans sour so quickly on Vance Joseph? Why are Nuggets fans souring so quickly on David Adelman? It's because both teams are being perceived as wasting the prime years of a generational talent's career. The conversation around Nikola Jokic is no different than the conversation around Von Miller. Had the best at what he does. Both teams did. It felt like one title was not enough. And it seemed like the coach was as big a part of as anything on why more championships weren't being won. Now, Vance Joseph got one more season, and this is where it's a little bit different, right? Adelman took over as interim. This is his first full year. Vance Joseph got the 1 year and then got another before ultimately he was fired. And part of the reason why he got a second year was much the same reason that David Adelman got the full-time gig. Had player support. Broncos players backed Vance Joseph after that first terrible season. That started off so promising. What does that remind you of? A regular season starting off so well and then going awry. But Broncos players backed Vance Joseph much the way Nuggets players after the Oklahoma City series backed David Adelman. And ownership listened. I don't know that you could totally blame them for that. But in the end, it turned out that the Broncos ownership made the wrong decision. And taking a straw poll of Nuggets Nation right now, I think there are a lot of people thinking that Josh Kroenke maybe would have been right to look beyond the support from the players and really assessed if David Adelman was the right guy for the job. Now, there's something that has happened recently because obviously the inevitable question is, does David Adelman survive this year? And we could talk about what circumstances in your mind would lead to David Adelman keeping his job or not keeping his job. But one thing that I would say would definitely keep David Adelman employed is the frugality of Stan Kroenke. But he has less of an excuse to do it now. And the reason is Michael Malone is now coaching at North Carolina. Coaches' contracts generally have offset language to say if you get a job somewhere else, I know MBA to college, does that exist? Is it all coaching jobs? I'm saying that there's a decent chance that the Nuggets are not on the hook anymore for paying Michael Malone. Because the idea of essentially paying 3 head coaches because they would have to fire and then pay Adelman, still paying Michael Malone and paying new head coach, that's out of the question. But if they're not on the hook anymore for Michael Malone, then maybe it becomes more conceivable that Stan Kroenke is willing to write another check. Not entirely conceivable, but more conceivable. But certainly if the idea was you were going to pay 3 head coaches simultaneously, that would be out of the question. But the problem, too, with this is that David Adelman is not one of the higher paid coaches in the league, as you might imagine. Okay? If David Adelman goes, let's spin this forward a little bit. David Adelman does whatever it is that you say he's got to be gone. Is it lose tomorrow night? I think for a lot of people it would be. But you're not going to be okay if you're a Nuggets fan with the next Vic Fangio walking through that front door, are you? You're going to want the next Sean Payton. That's what you're going to want the Nuggets to get. So, couple of names just thrown out there. It doesn't seem to me like Steve Kerr wants to coach again, but Steve Kerr would qualify. How about a guy like Tom Thibodeau? Doesn't he sound like a great fit for the Denver Nuggets? Consistently gotten teams to give maximum effort, defensive-minded guy. I don't know that I think part of the allure of hiring David Adelman, and I hate to say this, but you've lived in the Kroenke Empire long enough to know that this also has to be considered. How much are those guys going to cost? I don't know if they're going to pay that kind of money, but leave that there. Cross that bridge when we come to it, if we ever do. The question I want to ask is not what would it take for you to believe David Adelman should be fired, because I think most people are in the camp that they would rather not see David Adelman continue as the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. I kind of feel like the Ball Arena crowd was a good indication of where Nuggets fans are right now. Let me ask you, what would it take for you to get off David Adelman's back? To not have the urge to go into Ball Arena and boo him? Is it winning the Minnesota series? For now. What if they win the Minnesota series only to be dispatched promptly by Victor Wembanyama in the Spurs? Aren't we going to be right back in the same position? So I don't think winning this series does David Adelman, in at least in the court of public opinion, any good. It's certainly losing this series would have many people calling for his job, but winning the series doesn't mean all is right, because it's not going to sit any better with Nuggets fans if Wemby and company dispatch of the Denver Nuggets as quickly as they got rid of Portland. And as positive as Game 5 was, as much as it has to at least raise your confidence level a little bit that they're going to win tomorrow night, it doesn't raise your confidence level that they're going to beat San Antonio in a 7-game series. There's a lot to unsee here from this series, and we can't forget that. Okay, we know where this series has turned. More of this series has been played than has yet to be played. And we're going to sit back at the end of this series one way or another and assess the whole thing, and there's going to be more negative than positive. So is it a long series with San Antonio, losing in 7 games? Do they have to beat San Antonio? Take your thoughts on that. But simply winning this series will not do it. Those Boo Birds will be right back there at Ball Arena for Game 2 of the, Game 3, Game 4 home court. It's tricky. They'll be back if the Nuggets get through this round and have a poor showing to start the series in San Antonio. Winning this series does not do anything, in my opinion, for the perception of David Adelman. Not at this point. The Nuggets are 6.5-point favorites tomorrow night in an elimination game where they are not the team that can do the eliminating. On the road. They're 6.5-point favorites. And they're certainly going to be favored in a game 7. So it was, and look, we live in a little bit of a bubble. We're a little bit more into what's going on with the Nuggets than maybe your average fan. And we know a lot of average fans make their way to Ball Arena. But I expected that atmosphere to lead to no booing of David Adelman. The booing that existed was quite surprising. Not surprising because there should be no frustration with him, but surprising because I didn't think as much of the Nuggets fan base or the people that would pay to get into that game 5 were really up on all of this, but they are. And if David Adelman, regardless of what happens this series, next series, or whatever, because I think the bridge too far is saying that the Nuggets are back on track to go to the NBA Finals. If they fall short, David Adelman's going to be living a similar life as Vance Joseph in year 2, where he is going to have no positive equity with the fan base or the media. He is going to be constantly under fire. And the drum beats are just going to get louder and louder and louder because the expectation next year is going to be no different than this one. 719-247-1313. How are you feeling about David Adelman these days? That's the question I'll lay out to begin the show. Mentioned Vance Joseph and the Denver Broncos. Let's bring them even more into the conversation because I think one of the more beloved recent Denver Broncos has called it a career, and he will end up spending the vast majority of his career with the Denver Broncos. That's next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. There's an old joke among us media members that cover the teams in this state that whenever any team not named the Broncos is getting a little too much attention, the Broncos will always swoop in with something to get themselves in the news cycle. And they've certainly found their way into the news cycle, or it could be because they're looking to counteract maybe some not so positive coverage that they are getting regarding the health of their franchise quarterback. More on that coming up. But today, Justin Simmons signed that proverbial one-day contract with the Denver Broncos to retire. Sometimes you forget that he did indeed play for another team, but he will go down as a Denver Bronco. Here is Justin Simmons on why he felt like it was time. Feels like Justin Simmons is still a very young guy, which he is. But here's Justin Simmons on when he knew it was time to call it a career.
But while I was sitting on the couch cheering for the Broncos and watching some of my guys play around the league, there is a sense of peace that I haven't really felt before. And for 8 years, I didn't have that. Even living here, like there's so much that you sacrifice being a player. And I was loving every second of it. And so that sat with me and it settled and it came to the surface of like, it's just time.
And I think, if we're being honest here, the lack of perhaps interest in his services probably forced him to start contemplating this. But I'm glad. I'm glad that he's at least in some part walking away on his own terms and that he is at peace with it, because there are a lot of athletes, not just football players, who are dragged kicking and screaming into retirement, and they don't really want to retire. Seems like Justin Simmons is fine with the whole thing, so I think that's the best news. Justin Simmons' career is going to be an interesting one because of the work he did in the community. I think he is beloved in Denver, and rightly so. But what do you grade Justin Simmons' career as? I mean, was it a smashing success? Was it good? The guy was a four-time second-team All-Pro, led the league in interceptions one year, but didn't do a lot of winning, right? And I think that's one thing that Justin Simmons expressed today, that it was difficult and maybe led to less recognition for his exploits over the years.
We just weren't good. We didn't find ways to finish out football games. And, there's times where like defense was playing well and offense wasn't. Offense played well and showed up and the defense didn't. We just never could really figure it out most times. And I wasn't always playing my best, but it's hard to get recognized as a player when your team is not doing well. It's a very difficult thing. And so I am proud of the way that like I was able to fight through some adversity in that.
And I think he's right. And I also think that's where maybe what Justin Simmons was as a football player was maybe inflated a little bit, just because he was one of the few players consistently on those Broncos teams that stood out. Like he was one of the best players on those Broncos teams, no doubt about it. And with football being the ultimate team game like it is, you can be kind of dragged down by a lackluster roster around you. And I give Justin Simmons a ton of credit for his career, because he was always who we were talking about at training camp, the Mondays after games, what Justin Simmons would do would be notable, even in more often than not Broncos losses. So I think he was able to rise above the fray a little bit and stand out. But I think Sean Payton, I think Sean Payton came in with a fresh set of eyes and kind of told you, about Justin Simmons. He felt like the Broncos could do better than Justin Simmons at that position. And I think that was one of the most significant moves that Sean Payton made in that way, because it was just this kind of this symbol of, what you thought was going well for the Denver Broncos. Somebody with, a Super Bowl ring came in and said, Sean Payton made his choices on the players he wanted to keep that he thought he could win with. And it's not to say that Justin Simmons wasn't a talented football player. But I do think that because of Justin Simmons' ability to stand out on very unremarkable Broncos teams, that it then led to, Justin Simmons is, the best safety in the NFL. And I don't know that there was a time where that was actually the case. But beloved, and certainly when you see the success that the Denver Broncos have this year, I think if you're a Broncos fan and me talking to Broncos fans, I think there would be a fair amount of them that said, who's the one player or who's one of the players that you wish was a part of this team, that you wish got to have this kind of success. Von Miller would probably come up for a lot of people, but I think Justin Simmons too. I think a lot of people wish that Justin Simmons stuck around, wish that Sean Payton had not let him go, and for Justin Simmons to be a part of this defense specifically, but this Broncos team that competed to go to a Super Bowl a year ago. And ultimately the question becomes with Justin Simmons, do you put this guy into your Ring of Fame? And that's actually our question on Facebook today. I don't look at the Broncos Ring of Fame as a totally serious operation. And that is for two reasons. One is because they put John Lynch in there when nobody is going to remember him as a Denver Bronco. Nobody. They put him in there to help boost his Hall of Fame chances. And good on them for doing that. I mean, that's, it's nice of them, but it kind of dilutes what you have in that Ring of Fame. And you're going to tell me Justin Simmons is going to go into the Ring of Fame before Ed McCaffrey? Yeah, Ed McCaffrey's still sitting out there. So I don't know what the criteria, I feel like Isaiah Thomas, I don't know what the criteria is to put somebody into the Ring of Fame. John Lynch makes no sense, and the omission of Ed McCaffrey makes no sense. So if you're asking me, does Justin Simmons deserve to be in the Broncos Ring of Fame, I will put him somewhere between those two and say he's more deserving than John Lynch, but far less deserving than an Ed McCaffrey. But you don't have to, we do this when athletes retire. We have this initial period, and it's part of the reason why you're supposed to wait to do the Hall of Fame vote, right? That's why there's the waiting period. It's a cooling off period. It's a chance to take everything in, because you could get caught up in the moment and say, man, Justin Simmons, what a great dude. And he was a great dude. He was one of the leaders of that football team. He was one of their best players on those football teams. But this is the Denver Broncos. Like, I'm speaking on your behalf as a Broncos fan. Like, the standard is a little bit higher here. No, you don't honor a guy that was really good on bad teams. This is how you honor them, getting him to sign the one-day contract and celebrating and remembering. Who remembers that kick block return for a touchdown that he had? Was that 2016? Deserves to be beloved, deserves to be honored as he is today. But you start putting guys into Ring of Fames and Hall of Fames on impulse and on emotion, and then you look and you're like, what was it that guy did again that warranted this? And this is not, I don't love doing this on the day that he retires, because again, he was a really good football player. And he was one of the few players worth watching on those Broncos teams. But the conversation naturally goes in this direction. I'm like, well, hold up, like, give it a little bit. There are more deserving Denver Broncos that are not listed in the stadium. So can we at least agree to put him down on the list and see if you eventually get to that point? But human being of the highest quality, was totally invested in the community, was totally invested in that football team. And I guess maybe in the end, what the shame is that the Denver Broncos weren't able to figure it out to take advantage of when Justin Simmons was at his best, to be able to win football games despite, not despite, but because of make what Justin Simmons did count. I think that's maybe what you lament more than anything, because you could tell every Sunday, like, this dude is pretty good at what he does. Can't really speak for a lot of the other guys on the field right now. But a shorter career than I think a lot of people thought he was going to have. But it was a good career. Good career for Justin Simmons in Denver. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313 if you think he should be in the Ring of Fame. And then also, what stands out to you about the career of Justin Simmons in Denver? We'll have more Drive Time Sports after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tonight, Switchbacks FC takes on Colorado Rapids in the round of 16 of the U.S. Open Cup, 7 o'clock. You could hear it on Extra Sports 1300. Had a chance to speak with some of the members of the Switchbacks. First, their captain, Matt Mahoney, a guy that really, when you stack up the biggest matches in the history of the club, Matt Mahoney has kind of been a part of most of them. So I asked him, where this one ranks and how excited they are to get this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to make history for the club. It's obviously the farthest this club's gotten in the Open Cup, and obviously first time we've beaten an MLS team. So yeah, it's kind of another free swing at an MLS team. In all my time here, we've not gone up and played the Rapids, so I'm looking forward to it.
And the free swing thing, I think, is going to be something that Roland and I discussed quite a bit leading up to the match tonight at 7 o'clock. Obviously, our coverage begins at 6:30. And Alan McCann said something to me that I think kind of underscores that. I think it's very important to understand. We've talked a lot about Game 6 between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. Who's the pressure on? I think it's pretty clear who the pressure is on in this matchup tonight between the Switchbacks and Colorado Rapids. Here's Alan McCann with more on that.
A lot of our lads love testing themselves against top opponent and top level opponent, and consistently want to be brought up a level of being tested. Mm-hmm. So for us, this is a perfect opportunity for that. And the pressure's not on us. The pressure wasn't on us against SKC either. So that presents a unique challenge as well. We literally get to go out there and be aggressive and be fearless and showcase ourselves.
Yeah, it is a unique thing because game to game during a season in most sports, some level of pressure can be applied to both teams, right? For any number of reasons. When you get a competition like this one, which is unique to sport, you really have one team that shoulders none of the pressure. And that's the Switchbacks. I mean, Alan McCann pointed out against Sporting Kansas City, they didn't either. And that was, I think, the match that kind of spurred the Switchbacks into the current form that they're in, that they've now won 3 matches in a row. I think they had pressure on themselves, maybe self-applied pressure early on in the season, right? They failed to do what they set out to do last year, which was repeat as champions. A head coach ends up getting fired over that season. And the guys kind of come in expecting more out of themselves, but also when a coach gets let go, the players shoulder more of the pressure because it's like, that person paid for it. And you saw the Switchbacks early on, some of the mistakes that they were making, maybe they were because they wanted to be perfect. And I think Alan McCann talked about that, particularly when he talked about the team not scoring goals early on in the season. It was that they were trying to be too perfect, too precise. Kind of that avalanche syndrome on the power play, right? Instead of just doing it. And then they go into a game against Sporting Kansas City that most people aren't expecting them to win. MLS, USL Championship. Nobody's expecting the Switchbacks to win. And they play free and loose, and they just go out there and do it, and they dominate. And they carried that into a match with Monterey Bay. And I thought, even though the scoreline wasn't as, big as the previous 2 matches, I thought that the Switchbacks played a very good game against Phoenix as well. In 3 different competitions, I think you're seeing a different version of the switchbacks. And I think it's just because they've seen now that if they just play free and loose and just be the talented players that they are, they'll have success. And I don't think that mentality ends tonight. Now, that can make things a little tricky, because here's the other side of the coin when it comes to the switchbacks tonight. They have no pressure, but they also can't just be happy to be there. Can't just be happy to be playing in the round of 16 in the U.S. Open Cup. That could be as dangerous as the pressure. To just say, you know what? This is just, we're happy to be here. You can't do that. Like, what started all of this? Because they've handled these competitions a little bit differently than in years past. And the impetus of that was the leadership group of the Switchbacks going to Alan McCann and saying, we want to go for these trophies. We got 3 of them that we could play for this year. We would like to give our best shot at all 3. So they wanted this. They wanted, their best 11 to go up against MLS clubs. They didn't want to just use that as a night to get some rest and to get other guys. No, they wanted to go and win. So the downside, I guess you could say, is taken out a little bit, because if they lose tonight, not a lot of people will go, oh, bad on the Switchbacks. But at the same time, this team expects to win. They want to win. They're going to try and win this tournament. So the downside risk, I suppose, of criticism and it isn't quite what it is for the Colorado Rapids, but that's not to say there isn't disappointment if the Switchbacks don't prevail tonight. They've made it one of their goals to win this tournament. So play loose, play free, understanding that the pressure is on your opponent, but also go into that match tonight with some intent to win the game. It's not like they're going into truly enemy territory. There's a good number of Switchbacks fans that will be up at Dick's Sporting Goods Park tonight. This is not a long road trip for them. They should feel comfortable. And it should lead to a good performance. I asked the head coach of the Switchbacks, Alan McCann, if the Switchbacks do win tonight, it's because they did what?
Made it scrappy, made it a USL championship game, not an MLS game. MLS, especially because there's a good IQ for our country, for this country at the level. You can see good patterns of play. You can see slow build. You can see, whereas USL is chaos. USL is transitions. USL is what is going to happen next. It's unpredictability. So for us, that's what the game has to look like.
And I think both of these teams are high-powered goal-scoring teams. In fact, the Colorado Rapids, in terms of scoring goals, are off to a phenomenal start. The Switchbacks certainly over the last couple of weeks have picked up their goal scoring, and the quality that they have with the season that Corey Bennett's having, where he's leading the league in goals, and some of the other guys that have been popping up in all of these competitions. Both of these teams like to score goals, but they do it in different ways, to Alan McCann's point. The Switchbacks want to pounce on mistakes by applying pressure. And the Rapids are a bit more methodical, working their way down to the final third. And I looked at a spray chart or goal chart. I mean, they score a lot of goals right in the goalkeeper's face. But they're both effective. So I think the first 15 minutes of this match are going to tell a lot. I think it's important for the Switchbacks to do what Alan McCann says right away and not wait. Because the longer it goes on, and if the Switchbacks are trailing, then that's where the Rapids use their MLS quality to play keep away. So I think a fast start is imperative tonight for Switchbacks FC if they're going to beat the Rapids. But conversely, if they do that and bring the Rapids out of their game a little bit, rattle them a little bit, then it's big time advantage Colorado Springs. It'll be a fascinating match tonight from Commerce City. 7 o'clock is the kickoff. Roland and I will be on the air 30 minutes prior on Extra Sports 1300. Love for you to join in. A lot of history in this matchup between the Switchbacks and the Colorado Rapids. They have not played in a decade, I think. And as Matt Mahoney mentioned, Switchbacks have never been to this point in the U.S. Open Cup. So a lot of history layered on top of one another. I'm excited for it. And you saw what beating Sporting Kansas City did as a springboard to the current form that they're in. With all due respect to Sporting Kansas City, Rapids are better. And they have some players that you're familiar with if you're a Switchbacks fan. Don't know what the lineup's going to look like, but Bryce Jamison, who has been a thorn in the side of the Switchbacks over the years, who they got from Orange County, he could be in the lineup. Darren Yappy, who used to play for the Switchbacks, he's on that team, and we'll see how many of the regulars, in addition to Yappy, play for the Rapids tonight. They may want to put on a good show for their fan base. You may see a few notable Rapids players in the starting 11. And by the way, on that track of, the connections between these two teams. So Darren Yappy played for the Switchbacks in 2021. Yosuke Hanya was on loan with the Switchbacks the last 2 years from the Colorado Rapids. Now he's a full-fledged member of the Switchbacks. So Yosuke Hanya revenge game tonight. You know how much I love those. And then maybe Adam Beaudry starting in goal tonight for the Rapids. Adam Beaudry from South Denver Lone Tree. Castle Pines is where he hails from. He was on loan with the Switchbacks from the Colorado Rapids in a previous season. So there's connections between these two franchises, as you might expect. So some familiarity as well with some of the personnel. Should be a fun one. Hope you'll join us for it. 7 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300. Coming up next, I teased this a little bit earlier. How much worry does there need to be with Bo Nix needing a second procedure on his injured ankle, and what does Aaron Rodgers have to do with all of this? You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Thanks for tuning in. Special shout out to those of you watching the show anywhere you scroll at 740 KVOR and at Extra Sports 1300. While you're there, if you would be so kind as to like, subscribe, and you can also comment right there on the live stream. You could also interact with the show at 719-247-1313 through calling or texting. So many ways to get in touch with the program. So my tinfoil hat was donned momentarily in hour number one when I said perhaps the retirement of Justin Simmons was intentional in timing, given that a day ago it was reported that Bo Nix had to have another ankle procedure. That wasn't on the schedule. That was not what it was supposed to be. He got the one, good to go. Onward and upward. Nope, needs another one. And now it's looking more like into the late summer when Bo Nix is going to be back practicing with the Denver Broncos rather than here, whatever they call mini camp, team activities, whatever they're called. The timeline has been pushed back. But Jeff Schwartz, longtime NFL offensive lineman, was guest hosting on Bleck and Abdallah this morning on Extra Sports 1300 and said, right now, this second surgery itself, not really a need to panic quite yet.
He's going to be fine for the regular season. The concern, of course, is that it's difficult for fans to process when an NFL team tells you everything's fine in March, and then all of a sudden, hey, guys, never mind, it won't be fine until August. So I get the angst with that, and maybe the Rodgers deal was for that reason, where Pittsburgh did that. But I do think Bo Nix will be back in August and he'll be fine.
So that's good. And that's kind of how I felt. Like, come back to me if Bo Nix is in a situation where his status for week one is in doubt. Right? Because that's when it really matters. I know we make the NFL a 12-month league, but let's be real here. You don't care that much if Bo Nix is going to be on the field for organized team activities. You care ultimately if he's going to be out there week one. Now, what Jeff Schwartz mentioned is the next kind of phase of this. You remember that report from Mike Florio saying that the Broncos were considering bringing in Aaron Rodgers for a visit? We talked about this on the show, yes? Well, the Steelers just did something else with Aaron Rodgers that is a little curious. I mean, this whole thing is Brian Windhorst's fingers. But the Steelers used a not often used mechanism available to them, which is a free agent. I believe it's a tender. But essentially what it means is that if Aaron Rodgers were to sign with a different team, his salary would go up and the Steelers would get a compensatory pick. And it just seemed curious when all along for really the last 2 years, it's been Aaron Rodgers is either going to Steelers or he's going to retire. So people are connecting dots here and saying, and I don't blame them for this, for going down this, rabbit hole. But a report from a pretty trusted NFL source, and Mike Florio, says the Broncos are considering bringing in, or we're bandying it about. It was discussed, the possibility of maybe bringing Aaron Rodgers in for a visit. The Steelers are now trying to do whatever they can to exert pressure on Aaron Rodgers to decide and to keep him from maybe wandering somewhere else. And this is all going on when Bo Nix has to get a procedure done on his ankle a little bit earlier, or kind of the way Mike Kliss put it, the expected follow-up procedure or recheck wasn't expected as recently as the league meetings 4 weeks ago, when Nix was to be a full go by the start of off-season program. Targeted full return is now training camp, which still means all good, providing no more setbacks. Providing no more setbacks. Wouldn't you argue this is a setback? Now, this is a setback when you can afford to have a setback, but is this not a setback? And can't you look at what's going on because of the Mike Florio report and what the Steelers have done, compare it and go, could this all be connected? I think it, and I said this with the Aaron Rodgers thing, I don't know that the Denver Broncos should seriously consider bringing in Aaron Rodgers in any way, shape, or form, because, you know, if you bring him in as your starter, then Bo Nix is toast. Then that's it. There's no coming back from this. For you saying, Bo Nix, you're not good enough, we're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, that's it. That's a wrap for the Bo Nix experiment. But even if you bring in Aaron Rodgers as insurance or as a backup, he is going to, at many times, overshadow Bo Nix because of who he is. He is Aaron Rodgers. He is an MVP. He is a Hall of Famer. So I didn't think that the Broncos would be wise to really consider this. But why were they talking about it? Is it because they don't believe in Bo Nix, the quarterback? I don't believe that's the case. It's because this team is now, and that's all we're talking about right now with Colorado sports, save for the Rockies, championship windows. Nuggets are wasting Nikola Jokic's prime in their championship window. The Avalanche have rebuilt themselves within their championship window, and now the Broncos are in one, having just gone to the AFC Championship the year prior. This is not a time to leave things to chance. If Bo Nix is predisposed to these ankle injuries, as Sean Payne intimated, and then did the gaslighting where I didn't say that, the Broncos cannot afford to just twiddle their thumbs and wait around for Bo Nix to get healthy. So I absolutely believe it was discussed within Broncos headquarters, the idea of bringing in Aaron Rodgers for a visit. I think they ultimately thought better of it, and they should. But the reason why they brought it up, why I believe they brought it up, is because of this. And now we get a setback. We get a procedure that wasn't scheduled. More work needs to be done to Bo Nix's ankle. While Bo Nix would have you believe that freak injury, nothing to see here, fix it, and onward and upward. Well, now it seems like some of the evidence is conflicting and maybe leaning more towards what Sean Payton said, but claims he did not say. Which also brings up another sore spot of this offseason for the Denver Broncos, which is Sean Payton saying one thing about Bo Nix's injury and Bo Nix saying another thing. Here's again, former NFL lineman Jeff Schwartz on Bleck and Abdallah here on Extra Sports 1300 on why that might be maybe the extra procedure, not a huge deal. The contrasting stories, that might be.
Sometimes there's a little bit of miscommunication and maybe purposely sometimes, between a team sort of how they feel about injury and then your own doctor.
Right.
So it's possible that the Broncos doctors thought this injury was going to happen at some point, and then Bo Nix's doctor was like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. So there could be a miscommunication there between those two parties. Teams also tend to be a little frustrated if you go outside the building for your facility, for your rehab and your surgery as well, and that could be part of this as well. So it's certainly possible that Bo Nix's doctor said, "Hey, man, you're not predisposed to getting this injury," and their doctors thought that maybe he was, and maybe there's a little bit of a disagreement there. And so Sean Payton is not listening to Bo's doctor, listening to his doctors, right? So that could explain potentially some of this back and forth.
And it's not good. It's and I said it at the time, it's not good that even a little disagreement between the head coach and the quarterback. No two people in all of sport need to be more in sync than the quarterback and the head coach, especially when that head coach is the play caller. Sean Payton's not the play caller anymore. Davis Webb is. Part of Davis Webb becoming the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos and the play caller is because his relationship with Bo Nix is clearly better than it is with Sean Payton. We've seen when there is no buffer between Payton and Nix, things can get a little heated, right? They've gone into it a few times. And then he goes over to the bench, sits with Davis Webb, calms down, everything is good, and away they go. The Broncos, I think at least part of the reason for making the moves that they did to make Davis Webb their offensive coordinator and play caller is because I think they know it's probably best for that buffer to always exist between Sean Payton and Bo Nix. And maybe it was even more apparent that this needed to happen when there was that little tiff between Payton and Bo Nix happened when it comes to the injuries. Bo Nix did not like that Sean Payton was telling stories out of school, was talking about what Bo Nix told him. And in Bo Nix's mind, mischaracterizing it. So all of this are little things, right? Bo Nix needs another procedure in April. Sean Payton and Bo Nix get into a little bit of a spat over the characterization of his injury in January. The Broncos discuss potentially bringing in Aaron Rodgers for a visit in, what was that, March? And the Steelers putting this tag or whatever on Aaron Rodgers to prevent him, or to try and prevent him from going somewhere else. All of these things on their own, probably little things. But you start to group all of them together, and it gets a little bit bigger than that. It's certainly become something to monitor. Now that the team building aspect of the offseason is over, Bo Nix's ankle is going to be the story. And if another tweet like Mike Kliss had yesterday comes out again, then I think it will be time to maybe worry a little bit that maybe Bo Nix, this ankle injury, whether it's something long-term or not, may impact his availability for when things really matter. Not right now in April, but August, September. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, is it possible that the Avalanche are too good? Sounds silly, But something's going on this week that I think the question has to be asked. Join us Monday, May 4th at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo for the Small Business Bash and Awards celebration. It is kicking off Small Business Week, hosted by the Pikes Peak SBDC, Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC, and the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado. Workshops, panels, networking events all week long. Register now at kvor.com. You know, there's a lot of people that are giving Avalanche general manager Chris McFarland his flowers right now. A lot of praise, right? Building a team that won the President's Trophy, swept through their first round series with the LA Kings. They look to be the team to beat in the NHL. But I just feel like people aren't telling both sides of the story here when it comes to Chris McFarland and the job he has done. So once again, as I always am, will be the one that is not afraid to criticize when it is warranted, even when everyone else is showering someone with praise. The fact of the matter is Chris McFarland has built too good of a hockey team, and it's a problem. Does that sound silly to you? It's happening. Day 2 of the NHL unveiling the finalists for their end-of-season awards, and day 2 of no Avalanche players mentioned. Nathan MacKinnon, despite leading the league in goals, right? Important statistical category. Last time I checked, goals. He has the most. And if you want to get a little nerdy, 5-on-5, best player in the league this year. Not one of the 3 finalists for the Ted Lindsay Award given to the most outstanding player in the league. So Nathan MacKinnon, by deductive reasoning, not one of the 3 most outstanding players in the league this year. Think about that. Sounds dumb, doesn't it? Today, despite leading the league in goals allowed average and save percentage, literally the only 2 goalie stats we care about, Scott Wedgwood, not a finalist for the Vezina Trophy awarded to the best goaltender in the NHL. How is this possible? Jared Bednar, help me out here.
I think he deserves to be in that list. Of course, I'm biased. I don't know if it, like, I really don't care about the league awards. There's only one trophy I care about.
All right. Who asked you anyway, Jared Bednar? We're caring about individual awards. Nathan MacKinnon and Scott Wedgwood's numbers. I'm just trying to figure this out. See if you're with me on this. Clearly viewed as a byproduct of a stacked Avalanche team, and it cannot be possible that part of the reason why the Avalanche appeared so stacked was because they maybe had one of the 3 most outstanding players in the league, or maybe one of the 3 best goalies in the league. I mean, what other conclusion am I supposed to arrive at? The Avalanche are so good, yet none of their individual players are so good. This seems like, am I caught in a paradox here? Because I don't understand this. How can a team finish with the best record in the league, allow the fewest goals, and score the most, and not have one of the 3 best players in the league or one of the 3 best players at their position? How is such a thing possible? How does this make any sense? And I know the argument against Scott Wedgwood. Didn't play enough games. Okay? There's no 65-game rule, by the way, in the NHL. So there's no threshold he had to hit. Every goaltender is eligible for the Vezina Trophy, he played 10 fewer games than Ilya Sorokin of the Islanders and Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins, who were both finalists along with Andrei Vasilevsky of the Tampa Bay Lightning. 10 games less. Is that so much that you ignore the fact that the guy that led the league in the two most important goalie stat categories did not get in? He plays 10 fewer games than those two guys, but he has more than a half a goal a game on both of them and a save percentage 13 to 15 points better. What could possibly happen in these 10 games that Scott Wedgwood did not play that would cause him to fall far behind Ilya Sorokin and Jeremy Swayman? What possibly could have happened in these 10 theoretical games? Because what I am saying is 10 games is not enough of a discrepancy to overlook the fact that the guy led the league in the only two categories anyone should care about when it comes to a goalie. And you know where I stand on this. Quarterback wins, pitching wins, goalie wins. Get them out of here. I think they are the dumbest stats in all the world of sports statistics. But since the press release that hit my inbox this morning wanted to point out that one of the big reasons was why Jeremy Swayman was a finalist for the Vezina Trophy was because he won 31 games. Scott Wedgwood won that many in 10 fewer chances than Jeremy Swayman. But again, his team's too good. If he played 55 games, if Scott Wedgwood played those 10 more games that are keeping him from even being nominated for this award, if he played those 10 games, I promise you, he would be a unanimous selection for the Vezina Trophy. Unanimous. He'd be on every single ballot, and he would get every first place vote. He led the league in goals allowed average and save percentage. And for people who care about goalie stats, or goalie wins, I should say, if he stayed on this pace, he would finish one win behind Vasilevsky while leading the league in goals allowed average and save percentage. Scott Wedgwood would be unanimous for the Vezina Trophy. There wouldn't even be a question. So if that is reasonable, what I have just said, isn't the guy at least worth being honored in this way? To at least be a finalist? And I know that Scott Wedgwood and Mackenzie Blackwood won the Jennings Trophy, which is given out to the best goaltending duo in the league. And they certainly deserve that, but also no one cares about that trophy. They don't. But the fact of the matter is this was the best goaltending tandem in the NHL since 2022-2023. The Boston Bruins of, coincidentally, Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark won the Jennings Trophy for the best goalie tandem. And Linus Ullmark won the Vezina Trophy with a true two-goalie rotation. Linus Ullmark won the award for the best goalie in the league. So there's your historical precedence to at least say, doesn't Scott Wedgwood deserve to be one of the three names? When Linus Ullmark, and I'm not even asking for Scott Wedgwood to win the award. And his numbers weren't as good as Linus Olmark. But they were as good as Linus Olmark compared to everybody else in the league. And it didn't hold back Linus Olmark from being named the Vezina Trophy winner. And it's holding back Scott Wedgwood from even being a finalist. I mean, at some point, someone on the Avalanche needs to get credit. Somebody. I mean, we know Jared Bednar's not going to be that dude that hasn't sniffed the Jack Adams Award in his time with the Avalanche, despite having multiple President's Trophy winning teams and taking teams that were, at the bottom of the league and making them playoff teams. Like Jared Bednar, for all of his exploits, guy can't even get mentioned for the Jack Adams Award. So that one's out. If Cale Makar is shut out of the Norris Trophy finalists, I might explode. How is it that the Colorado Avalanche as a team are so good, but they are apparently full of the fourth best players at every position in the NHL? You see where I'm having a hard time reasoning with this? Not one of these guys is worthy of being the most outstanding player in the league. Not one of these guys is worth being considered for the best goaltender in the league or the coach. I mean, Chris McFarland better win it, and this might be his master plan. He puts together such a good team that the only person that could win a postseason award is Chris McFarland himself for Executive of the Year. That might be his master plan. Scott Wedgwood, nope, you're not going to get the Vezina Trophy because I have Mackenzie Blackwood too. Nathan McKinnon, you're not going to win an award because you got Marty Necas. Cale Makar, you're not going to be the Norris Trophy because you have Devon Taves. Like, how is this possible that none of these guys get viewed as one of the three best at what they do? How dare you, Chris McFarland? How dare you build such a good team that no individual is worth being honored except yourself? And I know that's where this is heading. Chris McFarland, GM of the Year. Nobody else gets any awards. Silliness. 10 games. Ilya Sorokin didn't even get the Isles to the playoffs. He had the same amount of wins as Jeremy Swayman, and he led the freaking league in the only two stat categories that matter. I could understand if it was like we had three guys, it was like Brodeur, Hasek, and Waugh, and then Scott Wedgwood's like, sorry, you're not quite enough. Ilya Sorokin, Jeremy Swayman, and they had terrific years. It's like Macklin Celebrini yesterday. Like Macklin Celebrini had a fine year. He's not one of the three best players in the league. Nathan McKinnon would skate laps around that guy at this point in his career. What are we doing? I need to take a cue from Jared Bednar. He doesn't care. Nathan McKinnon doesn't care. And I saw a clip of Scott Wedgwood on Twitter. Guess what? Scott Wedgwood doesn't care. But you know what? I'm going to fight on their behalf anyway. So we got, I think the next one, Norris Trophy is until next week. I think the Jack Adams is next. And if you're an Avs fan, you know, like, don't even bother looking for Jared Bednar's name. Too good of a team Jared Bednar has. Like, I'm not saying all these guys, the Avalanche should win every award. I'm just saying, you're going to put out three finalists. How can an Avalanche player that was a part of a President's Trophy winning team not be one of the three best at their position? That's all I'm saying. They don't have to win all of these awards. I wouldn't make Scott Wedgwood the Vezina Trophy winner. That's Vasilevsky. But guy's got to be a finalist. Come on. What are we doing here? 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that. Update on the health of Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon in advance of Game 6 between the Nuggets and the Wolves. That's coming your way next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tomorrow night, Game 6, Nuggets and Wolves. Same rules apply as Game 5. Nuggets got to win. And I said this yesterday that as great of a story as Spencer Jones was in Game 5, you just don't count on that when a series goes on the road. I mean, look at Ayo DeSumo. Didn't quite have the game he had in Minnesota and Denver, did he? Role players play better at home. So if you want a closer to a foolproof plan for the Denver Nuggets to win again in Game 6 and get Game 7 in Denver, Aaron Gordon would help. David Adelman speaking today on the status of Aaron Gordon. Boy, did he say a lot of words. You already knew that David Adelman said he said it was unfair to keep Aaron Gordon in that game the other night. And he went on to kind of elaborate today on that sentiment. It's that if you have a guy with a soft tissue injury like Aaron Gordon has, and you play him and then he sits out, the longer he sits out, the worse it gets. Right? It tightens up on him. And he thought that the halftime break was the thing that made it get to the point where Aaron Gordon was unplayable in the second half. And then he ended his answer with there is a point where it's not good for him. It's not good for the team, and everybody knows Aaron that wants to play. The guy's the ultimate teammate. He's been so good for us over the years, but we have to do what's right for him and the team. Can I say something? Can I draw a conclusion? I think at best, it's the same situation in Game 4. I think because Aaron Gordon's will to play is so great, I think that they will give it a go. But I don't expect Aaron Gordon to be any more effective than he was in Game 4. I mean, that's the best case scenario, honestly, with Aaron Gordon. He feels good enough to give it a go, wants to give it a go. David Adelman allows him to. He looks limited, and then he's done for the night. I don't know that – I don't want to say there's no medicine or science behind it, what their decisions are. But being able to predict how it's going to look is difficult. So does the situation call for at least giving it a go with Aaron Gordon? I think so. But again, in the same token, I just don't know how effective this guy will be. And if you're just ultimately going to end up sitting him again for the rest of the game, is it really worth it? I mean, consider the other pieces of this. Minnesota has all the pressure on them. Right? So you have that going for you. Nikola Jokic looked much better in Game 5 than he has for most of the series. You got that you feel pretty good about. You brought the physicality necessary, and part of that physicality is like Aaron Gordon brings the physicality. You're not quite sure everybody else on that roster will. Well, your team did. So I understand the winner go home aspect will make Aaron Gordon want to play and may lead David Adelman to playing him. But as I look at the bigger picture here and the situation in Game 6, I'm kind of like, is it worth it if my expectations for Aaron Gordon are no higher than him performing at the level he did in Game 4? So this is one of those situations where what I think will happen and what I think should happen, I don't know if they're in lockstep. I think we see Aaron Gordon tomorrow night, but I don't know that we should. And there's no guarantee that he's going to be any better for Game 7 or, knock on wood, Game 1 of a series against the Spurs. There's no guarantees here. But I think there's enough other stuff going for the Denver Nuggets that maybe you ride it out and see if you can win without Aaron Gordon. If Aaron Gordon is at least somewhat effective, I understand that it increases the likelihood that the Denver Nuggets win, but that last part of we got to do what's best for him and the team, he didn't look good. Oh, maybe it will be a situation like, which game was that? I lose track. But when we found out that Nikola Jokic knew he wasn't going to play like 3 days in advance, I could also see that being like, this is just David Adelman, filibustering. And the decision has already been made that, he's not going to play. But as far as my opinion on it goes, my predictions, a little hit and miss. My opinion, I don't know that it's worth playing him. Now, it would be easier not to play him if you had Peyton Watson available to you. Well, here's the next thing. He has been listed as out for tomorrow night's game. He's not coming back. And is he? You have to start asking the question: has Peyton Watson played his last game with the Denver Nuggets? This has been a long time that he has been out. And I want to be fair to Peyton Watson here because Aaron Gordon risked his career. That's not being overly dramatic. What Aaron Gordon did in Game 7 last year was putting his career at risk. But he wanted to do it for his team. And that's why it's going to be so heartbreaking if the Denver Nuggets end up trading Aaron Gordon, is because this dude has given everything to the Nuggets. So I want to be fair and not say, well, Aaron Gordon tried to come back and Peyton Watson didn't. Two very different careers, two very different stages of their career. And I kind of look at it like, I will give Aaron Gordon extra, praise for not playing or for playing, but I'm not going to kill Peyton Watson because he's not. Aaron Gordon's got his money. Peyton Watson doesn't. The conversation is different with these two players. Now, I'm not saying, as some have intimated on the dark recesses of Twitter, that Peyton Watson is getting advice that he shouldn't play, or Peyton Watson is holding himself out and he's perfectly capable of playing, just doesn't want to risk the bag that he's going to get. I don't believe that. I think all injuries, there's same as we were talking about with Aaron Gordon. There's a risk reward. Everybody's different. And I just think that the Nuggets have decided to err more on the side of caution with Peyton Watson, who could be used as a trade chip this offseason. And look, I don't know that Aaron Gordon would have played if Aaron Gordon wouldn't have pushed it. Right? I feel like the reason why we've seen Aaron Gordon in this series is because Aaron Gordon's like, I'm, being the vet that he is, I'm playing. So I want to be fair to Peyton Watson and not say he should play because Aaron Gordon's giving it a try, because I just got done saying that I don't know how much Aaron Gordon has actually contributed in this series because of his injury. Now, on the topic of Peyton Watson, he spoke to Mark Stein, who, longtime NBA writer, has a Substack now. Peyton Watson told Mark Stein it's in the organization's hands as far as his future in Denver. And he said, I truly feel as though they value me here, but obviously come time to resign, everything will come to light. Now, that's what I don't like as much. And you shouldn't like as much if you're a Nuggets fan, because that's Peyton Watson knowing full well maybe he doesn't dive deep into the numbers. He understands the payroll situation the Denver Nuggets are in. I do think that the Nuggets would like to keep Peyton Watson. I believe that. But is Peyton Watson going to take less than, and I know he's a restricted free agent, so it's a little bit of a grayer area. But I'm just saying, is Peyton Watson willing to make his long-term extension worth $550K? Nuggets would love him back at that number. So when I see a quote like that, it's like he's putting everything on the Denver Nuggets. So if the Nuggets do not pay him, then Peyton Watson could say, I wanted to stay. I thought they wanted me to stay, but now players always do this stuff. Peyton Watson knows full well, and his agent, Rich Paul, knows full well that the Denver Nuggets are up against it, and the reality in the NBA is you cannot pay everybody. You just can't. The question is, do the Nuggets go beyond just saying goodbye to one of the three players we have discussed, Aaron Gordon, Peyton Watson, or Cam Johnson, or do they go a little bit further because they don't want to pay a repeater tax? The second apron is the thing that, as a fan, I think you can understand why the Nuggets and other teams, the Boston Celtics, didn't want to go in the second apron. They dumped Porzingis so they didn't have to go into the second apron. You understand that. But a luxury tax that still allows you to make other roster moves and retain your players, that's where fans' patience wears a little bit thin. And that's going to be the big question with the Denver Nuggets this offseason, whether the offseason starts on Friday or beyond that. Are the Nuggets just trying to stay out of the apron so that doomsday scenario Josh Kroenke vaguely spun this time around last year when he said we'd have to contemplate trading Nikola Jokic? That's the second apron stuff. The repeater tax is more Stan Kroenke not wanting to pay dollar for dollar. Ben Tenzer and John Wallace would still be able to make moves. It'd be a little bit more restrictive, but it's not the second apron. That's where you could start to call a team cheap. The second apron, there's real practical reasons for not going into it. To avoid the second apron, one of these guys has got to go. There's no other way to it. But if two guys got to go, two guys don't have to go. And I wonder if two guys out of that group, Cam, Aaron, and Peyton, if two of those guys are going to be gone. But we could push that off for a very long time if starting tomorrow night, the Nuggets just keep winning. Game 6 between the Nuggets and the Wolves, 7:30. Now the tip-off time, we now know that. You could hear it on Extra Sports 1300 and watch it at the Brass Tap off Bass Pro Drive with $3.50 pints of Coors Light, Coors Banquet, Miller Lite, and Mountain Time. Back after this. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you. Whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, or you're watching the show anywhere you scroll. Coming up tonight, 7 o'clock, Switchbacks and Colorado Rapids in the round of 16 of the U.S. Open Cup. Myself, along with Roland Vargas, will have that one for you. In fact, more on that momentarily. But want to throw out the contact info at 719-247-1313. Did get a text in from Scott asking, with the Brass Tap now being partners with us for the playoffs, am I going to be out there doing the show? And the answer is yes. Details TBA and TBD. But yes, we'll be out at the Brass Tap. We need to get this, see how far the basketball team of record goes, and also find out when the hockey team is going to be back in action, because it feels like it's not going to be until June till the hockey team plays. Although the Minnesota-Dallas series could be over, theoretically, on here pretty soon, with the Wild now up 3-2. But yes, stay tuned for that. We'll let you know. And we'd love to see you out there at the Brass Tap on Bass Pro Drive. Right now, let's get to the three stories that are driving the show. All right, let's no rhyme or reason. Let's start. I just mentioned the Open Cup. Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to make history for the club. You know, it's obviously the farthest this club's gotten in the Open Cup, and obviously first time we've beaten an MLS team. So yeah, it's kind of another free swing at an MLS team. You know, in all my time here, we've not gone up and played the Rapids, so I'm looking forward to it.
That is Switchbacks captain Matt Mahoney on tonight's matchup with the evil empire to the north. Too strong, considering these two teams don't meet. But that's going to be the case tonight. And you heard Matt Mahoney say free swing. And I think what is on the Switchback side tonight in Commerce City is that they don't have the pressure. It is expected that the MLS club will win in any matchup between an MLS club and a USL Championship club. So the Switchbacks can go in and not be weighed down by the pressure. But I do think there's another side to the coin, and that's the, fighting the urge to just be happy to be there. It's a fine line to walk, but I think that the Switchbacks got to walk that line tonight. No, they don't have any pressure. Okay, the Rapids are expected to win. However, part of the reason why the Switchbacks are in this position and have advanced the furthest they've advanced in this tournament ever is because they went to their head coach, Alan McCann, and said, we want to go for this thing. We don't want you to give some of the young players some reps or whatever. Put out an 11 that is capable of winning these matches because we want to win them. And it doesn't change tonight. The Switchbacks want to win. This is not just them trying to showcase themselves on a bigger stage. This is about winning another match. This is about extending the win streak to 4 matches. This is a team that I think, with the way they have turned things around here, and they weren't playing poorly to start the season, but they've been, they've been really good over the past week or so. And I think they've found something that's sustainable. And if they sustain it, they're going to give a run at all 3 trophies that are available to them. Very difficult to win all three. I don't know if anybody has. But they're off to a good start in the USL Cup. They're in the round of 16 in the US Open Cup. And we're, obviously every team in the USL Championship feels like they still can make a run at the league championship. So if they possess the quality and the talent to be able to make a run at these things, they should continue to make that run. They shouldn't be satisfied with, hey, we've gone further than any Switchbacks team has gone before, and we already beat one MLS team. No, advance further. Win another match. Beat another MLS club. They don't have pressure, but that doesn't mean that they should just be happy to be playing the Colorado Rapids tonight. They should be looking to win the match. And I think the first 15 minutes are going to say a lot about how tonight is going to go. Hope you'll join us for that at 7 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300. Now let's go to story number 2.
4th and 22. Mahomes getting away from Benito and then just heaving it downfield, and it's intercepted. Picked off by Justin Simmons. 5th time he's gotten Mahomes in his career.
Kevin Harlan on CBS with that call, perfectly encapsulating one of the things that Justin Simmons will be known for. As today he called it a career, officially signing a one-day with the Broncos and reflecting on a career that was very good, but the thing with Justin Simmons is that he just never had the team to take his talents and amplify them and make them count to the point that the Broncos are going to the playoffs. But nobody has picked off Patrick Mahomes more than that guy. And then you remember the blocked kick, ran back for a touchdown that he had. I believe that was 2016. There were certainly some highlights and some things that Justin Simmons will be remembered for as a Denver Bronco. And I think chief among them is how good of a human being he is, how ingrained in the Denver community he was, how much of a leader he was on that team. He would have to answer for a lot of other players not doing their job. And he didn't throw people under the bus. He always took accountability. He was a perfect teammate. It's just a shame that his talents were mostly wasted during an era of Broncos football that most people would like to forget. But he was a good player. 4-time second-team All-Pro, in the conversation at one point or another of being the best safety in the NFL at the time. The bigger question that many people are asking, including us on our Facebook page, is he a Ring of Famer? I don't pretend to understand why the Broncos do what they do with that, but I will just say what a Ring of Famer means or should mean. I don't know that Justin Simmons qualifies. I'll certainly say this. Until Ed McCaffrey gets into the Ring of Fame, Justin Simmons shouldn't be in the Ring of Fame. But is he more deserving than John Lynch? Absolutely. So, again, I don't know that it's a career that you immortalize in that way. I just don't see that. But the thing is, there are careers that he had better than John Lynch. So maybe he does end up in the Ring of Fame one day. But for me, it was a lot of losing. It was a very, in the grand scheme of things, pretty short career for Justin Simmons. Did not get to really extend it beyond his time in Denver. And I think it's part of the reason why he's announcing his retirement is because it didn't seem like there were a lot of teams knocking down his door for his services. But when he was in Denver, he's a really good player, even better person and a teammate, and he deserves today, right? Celebrating his career, remembering the great things that he did when he was in a Broncos uniform. His sports history is filled with guys that were really good. They were just on bad teams and maybe never got the recognition that they would have otherwise. But Justin Simmons calling it a career as a member of the Denver Broncos. Here is story number 3. Jared Bednar, Avalanche head coach.
There's only one trophy I care about, so I feel like there's a lot of our guys that are the same way. If I cared, I could probably put together a case that Wedge should be in there.
That is Jared Bednar keeping the main thing, but the Avalanche curiously shut out of another postseason award as Scott Wedgwood, not one of the 3 finalists for the Vezina Trophy. This a day after the NHL players decided that Nathan MacKinnon was not one of the 3 best players in the league this year. So the hits just keep on coming. The jokes keep on rolling. Scott Wedgwood played 10 fewer games than Jeremy Swayman and Ilya Sorokin, who were finalists. 10. But Scott Wedgwood won as many games as Jeremy Swayman did. And he led the league in goals allowed average and save percentage. The guy in Tampa deserves to win the award. Like, I'll just say that. But the fact that you can't see the merits of Scott Wedgwood at least being honored in this way, being a finalist, being invited to the awards ceremony at the end of the year, to have a season like this recognized is almost as comical as Nathan McKinnon's peers not understanding that Nathan MacKinnon is absolutely one of the 3 best players in the league this year. But it's going to be the same refrain. Here's the argument against the team's too good. It's too good of a team. Like, okay, so the Avalanche are really good, and you're saying that Scott Wedgwood and Nathan MacKinnon have help. I concede that point to you. Is part of the reason why the Avalanche are so good Scott Wedgwood or Nathan MacKinnon? Do they get any of or were they complete byproducts of the players around them? And I'm asking it rhetorically because I know the answer. I clearly watch more Avalanche hockey than a lot of the NHL awards voters. And you did too. Scott Wedgwood was not just a solid goalie that had a great team around him. And you're seeing it, and I know it's not a postseason award, but you're seeing what Scott Wedgwood has been this season for the Avs in this first-round series with the Kings. He's not just a guy that will make the saves he's supposed to. He's more than that. And 10 games should not disqualify him in the minds of voters for him being recognized as one of the 3 best goalies in the NHL this year. It's just such an easy thing to do, as easy as it is to, use a best player on best team for an MVP argument. It's as easy to diminish the accomplishments of a player by just simply saying he was on the best team and he has a lot of help. Those arguments lack nuance on both sides. Scott Wedgwood was one of the 3 best goalies in the league this year. And maybe it's Jake Ottinger wasn't as good as he has been in previous years. I'll acknowledge that there were some guys, Shesterkin, Hellebuck. Like, I get it. Some guys had down years when Scott Wedgwood had an up year. One of the three best goaltenders of this 2025-2026 season was Scott Wedgwood. Point blank, period. Maybe he wasn't the best, but he's one of the three best. But Wedgwood doesn't care. So why should I? 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. We'll continue on after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tomorrow night, game 6 between the Nuggets and the Wolves. Nuggets still need to win. Wolves can live to fight another day, but I really don't think they want the series to go back to Denver. Because all this talk about no Ant, no Dante DiVincenzo, I think it gets to them every minute that goes by. And every minute this series is prolonged, that doubt creeps in their head that they're able to do it without those two players. And I said in the wake of Game 5 that the two things that I'm pretty sure, with the Nuggets, you can never be 100% sure. You never know. They kind of move at their own speed. They kind of move to the beat of their own drummer. You think something's going to be the case because of a familiar pattern or what, and the Nuggets just say no. But the two things that I think you saw in Game 5 that you will see in Game 6. One, I do think Nikola Jokic is going to play more like he did in Game 5 as opposed to Games 3 and 4 in particular. I think a lot is on Rudy Gobert and the idea that he's going to hold down Nikola Jokic for a 7-game series. I don't think that he can, as terrific of a defender as he is. Offense beats defense most of the time. So I think you'll see more of the same from Nikola Jokic. And the other thing, the physicality that the Denver Nuggets had, I think more brought on from the desperation of this situation than anything else. David Adelman's coaching is what I expect to continue. And David Adelman kind of intimated that as well after shoot around in Minnesota, said, I think we can play this same way. The way we played in Game 5, I think we could play it in Game 6. And for the first time in a while, David Adelman and I see eye to eye. And I think that's what he's talking about. Like, he'll say the offense stuff too. But part of why the Nuggets were successful offensively is because they did things that we had been asking them to do many games ago. Try to help out Jokic. Screen. Get guys open. Minnesota's a good defense. Nobody ever said Minnesota wasn't going to be difficult defensively for the Nuggets to handle. Use screens. Be more physical. That's what we had been asking the Denver Nuggets to do. They finally did it in Game 5, and I think because they're still going to be desperate, their season's still on the line, and because they hate Jaden McDaniels in his face, I think they're going to do more of it. So I do think that is going to continue. But this is where Chris Finch comes in, from the artist who brought you Jamal Murray is flopping. Again, let me reiterate that. Jamal Murray was flopping in Game 1. Here is Timberwolves coach Chris Finch. Chris Finch is decent stuff. I mean, it was preposterous for him to say that Jamal Murray was just not that type of play. And if you look back at all the fouls that Jamal Murray incurred, yes, there are always going to be a few that are questionable. Okay, but it's the same thing with the screen. Trust me, if there were illegal screens in the game, they would all on with the Denver Nuggets. I mean, that's Chris Finch being completely disingenuous. Did anybody point out the screens that were illegal? And I'm not even talking about you. I'm talking about the broadcast, the impartial national broadcast that everyone seems to hate so much. Nuggets fans, let me ask you, do you recall this big conversation from the objective observers following the game saying, wow, that's an illegal screen, that's an illegal screen, that's an illegal screen? Maybe it happened during the White House press conference. I just missed it. I was watching ABC, ESPN. The illegal screens are one of those calls. And I know what Chris Finch is doing. It's annoying, but you know what he's doing. Illegal screens might be the closest thing in basketball to holding in the air. If there is a call that can be made almost every single time down the floor, it would be an illegal screen. Every screen you see, look like his shoulder moved a little bit, oh, that leg moved a little bit. It's like holding in the NFL. If you really wanted to bog a game down and make it completely unwatchable, go ahead and flag every offensive lineman every time they but the way they do it, I think it's, and I'm not an NBA referee, but the way they seem to officiate illegal screen is, one, is it egregious? Because they'll call it if it's egregious. They'll call offensive holding when a pass rusher gets dragged to the ground. And also the situation, right? If a guy is getting screened, 25 feet away from the basket, and it's kind of on the borderline, I think that the referees are right to go, yeah, we'll let that one go. But Chris Finch, stickler for the rules, every illegal screen should be, and by his judgment, they would only be called on the Denver Nuggets because the Minnesota Timberwolves are quite literally the greatest screening team in the history of the NBA. Their screens are perfect. Rudy Gobert never slightly sticks out his head. Jaden McDaniels never slightly leans his shoulder into a Nuggets play. I gotta tell you, Minnesota, they must only practice screening in their practicing. You know what Chris Finch is doing. The Nuggets got, just like game one with Jamal Murray in the foul, okay? So Minnesota in game one has a difficult time guarding Jamal Murray. Right? I think that's fair. A lot of teams have guarding this version of Jamal Murray. He's an all-star. He's been very good. Okay? But that's without Jamal Murray going to free throw line a lot because he is one of the most ethical hoopers out there. So you added how difficult it is to cover Jamal anyway, and now you're fouling him, and he's getting to the line with regularity, then that's a big problem if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's the same thing here. The Denver Nuggets offensively are, as much as Minnesota maybe at times has made it look easy, the Nuggets are not an easy team to guard. So if you're able to guard them well enough, as the Wolves have for most of this series, because the Nuggets are screening, and now they start screening, well, now you have an even more difficult time guarding the Denver Nuggets. This is Chris Finch trying to, make something that's already a Nuggets strength or advantage in this series and making sure it doesn't go beyond it. Jamal Murray's scary. Jamal Murray shooting 15 free throws, petrifying. The Denver Nuggets offense just standing around doing nothing, still kind of difficult to deal with. They screen and they start moving around, then you stop. Minnesota had a very difficult time staying with them defensively, and that's in everything I look at from that game and try to take DiVincenzo and Anthony Edwards out of it and say this is just the Nuggets being better than the Minnesota Timberwolves. I thought most of that was on the offensive end, and I think Chris Finch saw it that way as well. Watch, Game 6, Nuggets get 5 blocks. Chris Finch is complaining about the Nuggets are slapping wrists of his shooters. I mean, it's a game everybody plays. Like, David Adelman is just as bad every time they play the Oklahoma City. So everybody does it, but it's pretty transparent. Like, Chris Finch, we know what you're doing. The Nuggets found a way to break down your defense by the novel concept of screen, something that has been in basketball for eons. They finally figured it out. Happy learned how to putt, and now you're trying to get that advantage back. You're trying to make the Denver Nuggets stand still and watch Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic do what they're going to do. Now, I will say, when it comes to the officiating, like Jamal Murray, you were never going to see an impact on that. Because Jamal Murray, that game was just, in game 1, was a little bit out of the ordinary. Not because Jamal Murray was flopping, but because a lot of Jamal Murray's shots are fadeaways and things like that. He just doesn't draw a lot of fouls. So he was going to naturally regress to the mean in terms of the amount of free throws he took. This here might be something to keep an eye on if the referees are listening to Chris Finch. Because this is not, and it's part of our frustration with the Nuggets for most of this series, are not a team that sets a ton of screen. So we'll be able to see here. Jamal Murray, we're never going to see whether the referees are not giving calls. Like, Jamal Murray is just not a guy that shoots a lot of free throws. That was going to naturally work itself out. The screening, who knows? Especially with the game being in Minnesota. Game 6, tomorrow night, 7:30. You can hear it on Extra Sports 1300. And you can watch it at the Brass Tap on Bass Pro Drive with $3.50 Coors Banquet, Coors Light, Miller Lite, and Mountain Time Sports Spirit Social. The Brass Tap. Back after this. how will we remember the proud, long history of Live Golf? Yes, in a move that everyone saw coming, the immediate moment that Live became a thing, the Saudis are pulling out of their investment in Live Golf, and the league is expected to die a quick and painful death. This was never meant to be a serious threat to the PGA. This was the Saudis doing the sports washing thing that they tend to do. And it was not about making a greater tour. And anybody that critically analyzed golf knew that there wasn't enough talent to be spread across the two. It's not popular enough for two. There's not even, I shouldn't say, because I was going to say there's not even enough room for two. I'll say professional sport, professional football league, college football kind of is. But it's the same thing with like the UFL and the XFL. Like we just don't have the desire to follow multiple leagues giving us half of the product. I like watching golf. And still the majors are pointing doing it. But the PGA Tour isn't, and Live isn't. Because I want to tune in to the PGA Tour and see everybody. If I tune into Live, which I don't think I did, but if I were to, I would want to see everybody. You just didn't get that. Now, the only worry, really, I think from the PGA Tour, and look, the PGA Tour did kind of what the NFL did with the XFL. All right, yeah, that might be a good idea. We'll kind of co-op that. We'll kind of do that. And I think the only real worry for the PGA is could the game of golf survive split in, it's not quite half, but we'll just say split in half. How long could it have lasted? It's not like the PGA Tour was ever going to be lesser of a product. The PGA Tour this whole time has been the better product. Live sucks. Their whole thing, everything about all their rules and everything. Why do you think I never watched them? The whole premise is dumb. So I actually don't think that the PGA Tour should have adopted some Live Tour stuff, but it was all money. That's all. The players just wanted more chances of making money, and that's what the PGA Tour has given them with some changes. But it just will Live hang on long enough? Will the Saudis grow bored, or maybe dealing with what the conflict that's going on in their side of the world? Were they going to hang on long enough to just completely ruin the game and destroy both themselves and the PGA Tour in the process? I don't think that's happening. I do think there has been a negative impact. But now, hopefully, all can get back to being whole again with the PGA Tour. And we can go the way we can have a 30 for 30. Although there is a really good show has a really good job. I believe it's called Live and Let Die, L-I-V and Let Die. It chronicles the circles that outfit was. And that was, I think it was a couple of years ago, so probably more stories to tell. I'm sure there will be people chronicling either in visual form or written form, like I don't want to say the rise and fall, but like the existence and the non-existence of the world. But that's going on. So really, gotta take the good with the bad. You gotta have the trade, right? We got the Avs, we got the Nuggets. Like, one of them is gonna be kind of disappointing, and the other one's gonna fill you with joy. Losing out on Liv, good riddance, but the NCAA tournament is expanding to 76 teams. So, like, we're never going to get to this utopia. But Liv going away is good. I don't know. Saying that it's good that it's going away is like acknowledging that it was something. I suppose it was, if you're really deep into the golf. So going away now. At the top of the show, I was theorizing, making a comparison actually first between David Adelman and Vance Joseph. I feel like their arcs and how quickly they have fallen out of favor with the fan base are similar. And I mentioned that if David Adelman were to be fired and you get what you want as a Nuggets fan, I don't think you're getting, to keep with the Vance Joseph comparison, I don't think you're getting Sean Payton on the end of it. I think you're getting Vic Fangio. Another change for change's sake, perhaps. But not somebody that you're going to go, yeah, that's definitely going to work. And I mentioned two guys that would be the Sean Payton for the Denver Nuggets. Tom Thibodeau and Steve Kerr. Well, I want to amend what I said because it is not yet official that Steve Kerr will no longer be coaching the Warriors. Report today that he met with Warriors ownership about the future of the team. I think definitely, like, look, okay, that's the process they're going through. I think Steve Kerr is done coaching Michigan State. I do. That's what I do. The question becomes, does Steve Kerr coach in the NBA? Soon or later? Is there any point where Steve Kerr is going to coach him? Because remember, that was my dream scenario when the Nuggets fired Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. Get the Warriors brain trust in there. Steve Kerr as coach, and I'm blanking on the executive name. Bob Myers. Thank you, Ray. At least half of that might be available. So we'll see. I mean, I think that Steve Kerr would want, but he was so, I mean, you just followed him this year. He was so, like, over everything. So to the point where I don't know if he was just tired of, because there's something to be said for, you're a dynasty, and now you're in ruins, and you're trying to, like, extract, greatness out of this once proud society. And was that beating him down because he talked about the season's too long, and he talked about, I think he was more, and this is a legitimate thing, I think, for a lot of people, what's going on in the world right now. He's very socially conscious, and I think a lot of that stuff kind of beat him down a little bit. He felt like he was more outspoken on things. So, I don't know. It may be just more than I'm tired of coaching this team that used to be amazing and now it's mediocre. Because that would mean reset, right? Steve Kerr going somewhere else, rejuvenated, ready to lead the Denver Nuggets to their next time. If it's the NBA itself, if it's the world, if it's all this other stuff, that is really why Steve Kerr came across as, like, really a less likable Greg Popovich. Like, without the sarcastic, old man, like, he came across as just very very angry. But I think he's done coaching. And then where does that leave Golden State with Steph? I think still wanting to go for him on still wanting to go. We'll see what transpires there. Just in case, the Nuggets happen to be looking for a head coach this offseason. Of course, tomorrow night will be, big in deciding whether the Nuggets are going to be doing that, right? Game 6 with the Wolves tomorrow. We'll discuss that game more at length. You'll hear from David Adelman and what the game plan is, the adjustments, all that kind of stuff, and get you ready for Game 6, which you can hear on Extra Sports 1300 tomorrow on the show. One more programming note: if you're on KBOR, obviously Mark Levin will be on immediately following this show for Extra Sports 1300 listeners. Coming up in a little more than 30 minutes, there'll be Roman Vargas and myself calling the U.S. Open Cup round of 16. Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC in Colorado Rapids. Should be a fun night. Hopefully, we'll stick around for that. My thanks to producer Rick Dominguez and to you for listening and watching. And we'll reconvene tomorrow. How does that sound? Here on 740 KBOR and Extra Sports 1300.